The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity. For centuries, the Council, composed of the most advanced alien civilizations in the universe, had kept humanity under control, monitoring their progress, limiting their expansion, and ensuring they never became a threat. Humans were seen as dangerous, unpredictable, and too aggressive for interstellar diplomacy. When Earth finally achieved faster-than-light travel, the Council responded with swift and decisive action. Humanity was banned. Every human colony beyond the solar system was forcefully abandoned. Trade routes were severed. All diplomatic ties were cut. The Council declared that any species aiding humanity would face severe consequences. Earth was isolated, cast into the void like a diseased world unworthy of galactic civilization. They thought it would break humanity, but it only made them stronger. The year was 2961, and Earth was no longer the helpless backwater the Council believed it to be. Deprived of resources, humanity had adapted. Forced to rely only on themselves, they had innovated at a terrifying pace. Within a century, Earth's technology had surpassed even the most advanced civilizations of the Council. The old, bureaucratic empires of the galaxy had grown complacent, their power stagnant. Humanity, however, had been forged in struggle. They had learned how to build warships with minimal resources, how to create energy weapons that required a fraction of the power of traditional Council weaponry, and most terrifyingly, how to enhance their own biology. The exiled species had become something far more dangerous than before. The Council's mistake was believing that fear and isolation would weaken humans. Instead, it had united them. And now, after centuries in the shadows, humanity was ready to return. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, in the ruins of an old mining station, General Elias Kane stood before a massive screen displaying tactical data. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension. Around him, Earth's greatest military minds watched in silence. "We're done hiding," Kane said, his voice low but firm. The room erupted into murmurs, but none dared to argue. The Council had pushed humanity too far. The Ban had not just exiled them, it had made them enemies. Operation Revenant begins now. Across the solar system, hidden fleets powered up their engines. Generations of secret preparation had led to this moment. The humans had built warships faster, deadlier, and more resilient than anything the galaxy had seen. Their soldiers, genetically enhanced, battle-hardened, and trained for the sole purpose of reclaiming their place, were ready. The Galactic Council believed humanity had been defeated. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Galactic Council remained oblivious to what was coming. For centuries, they had turned their attention elsewhere, focusing on petty squabbles between the dominant alien races, content in their belief that humanity had withered away in exile. But now, the first signs of Earth's return were beginning to ripple through the galaxy. It started as whispers, ships vanishing along the outer trade routes, deep space communication hubs going silent, supply convoys failing to reach their destinations. The Council dismissed these as pirate raids, an inconvenience at most. Then, the attacks became more precise. A Jari battleship, one of the largest in the Council fleet, was found adrift near the Orion Expanse, its crew missing, its weapon systems disabled in ways no one could explain. A month later, a secret Council research station on the edges of the Alpha Draconis system went completely dark. When a reconnaissance team arrived, they found every security system fried, data cores stolen, and the words, "We remember," scrawled across the station's walls in a language no alien could read. The Council was beginning to take notice. On Earth, deep beneath the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, General Kane stood in the heart of humanity's greatest weapon, the Warborn Command Center. Before him, a holographic display of the galaxy flickered, red marks appearing where their strikes had already been felt. Beside him, Commander Asha Varma, leader of the Phantom Division, spoke with quiet intensity. "The Council is still in the dark," she said. "They don't realize it's us yet, but they're getting closer." Kane nodded, eyes fixed on the galactic map. Let them wonder. Let them grow paranoid. By the time they realize the truth, it'll be too late. Phantom Division was humanity's greatest creation. Soldiers augmented with biosynthetic enhancements, capable of infiltrating even the most fortified alien strongholds. They moved unseen, striking like ghosts, leaving nothing behind but fear. Kane turned to the rest of the War Council. "The time for small strikes is coming to an end. We need a message." His gaze hardened. Something they can't ignore. Commander Varma exchanged a glance with Admiral Nix, leader of the Black Armada, Earth's hidden war fleet. A slow, knowing smile spread across Nix's face. "There's a Council stronghold in the Tau Ceti system," Nix said. "A fortress world, heavily defended, one of their most secure locations outside the core worlds. If we hit it, they'll have no choice but to acknowledge us." A hush fell over the room. To strike a world of the Council was an act of war, but war had been inevitable the moment humanity had been cast out. Kane exhaled slowly, then spoke with finality. "Then Tau Ceti falls." Across the solar system, humanity's fleets prepared for the first open battle in centuries. The Black Armada, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, emerged from the hidden shipyards of Titan. Weapons were primed, engines roared to life, and soldiers stood ready, their minds filled with generations of anger and determination. The Council had thought they had crushed humanity. Now, humanity was coming for them. The fleet moved in silence. Hundreds of warships, sleek and angular, designed for speed and devastation, cut through the void as they approached Tau Ceti. The Black Armada had been forged in the darkness of exile, each ship a product of desperation, innovation, and revenge. They bore no insignia, no markings, only the cold, black armor that swallowed light, a fleet of shadows descending upon the Galactic Council's fortress world. Aboard the Nemesis, Admiral Nix stood at the command deck, her silver eyes reflecting the tactical displays around her. "Stealth drives holding," one of her officers reported. "Council sensors won't see us until it's too late." Nix allowed herself a grim smile. "Let's make history, then." On the surface of Tau Ceti III, the Council's fortress stood as a monument to their arrogance. The world housed one of the largest garrisons outside the core worlds, with planetary defense grids, orbital cannons, and enough firepower to hold off an entire fleet. But it wasn't built to stop this fleet. The first sign of the attack was the blackout. In an instant, the planet's communication networks collapsed. Every satellite, every relay station, every security system, silent. The fortress's automated defenses flickered, their targeting systems scrambled by unseen forces. Then the sky opened. Human warships, moving with terrifying precision, rained fire upon the Council's forces. Orbital cannons were wiped out in seconds. Anti-air batteries turned to molten slag before they could even activate. The fortress, once a symbol of the Council's might, had become a tomb. From above, the Phantom Division deployed. Silent figures dropped from the sky, clad in adaptive armor that blended with the shadows. They moved like wraiths, bypassing defenses with ease, cutting down guards before they could raise alarms. Commander Asha Varma led the charge, her squad infiltrating the command center. The alien officers inside barely had time to react before they were executed with ruthless efficiency. Within minutes, the Council stronghold was in flames. In the Council's capital world of Verathis Prime, panic erupted. News of the attack reached the ruling chambers with unprecedented urgency. A race that was supposed to be banished had just wiped out an entire fortress world without suffering a single loss. Senator Zalthor, a reptilian representative of the Jari Empire, slammed a clawed fist onto the table. "This is impossible. Humanity was neutralized." Across the chamber, Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar, leader of the Galactic Council, stared at the transmission. Smoke and fire filled the view screen, the ruins of Tau Ceti 3 standing as proof of their failure. A single message had been left behind for the Council to see, carved into the ruins of their stronghold. "We have not forgotten. We have not forgiven." The Chancellor's mandibles clicked in agitation. We were fools to believe they would stay silent. Zalthor's eyes narrowed. "Then we crush them. We gather the fleets and we burn Earth to the ground." A new voice interrupted, cold, calculating. "No." All eyes turned to the speaker, High Strategist Elvan of the Karithi Dominion, the most advanced military mind in the Council. Her insectoid form remained motionless as her many eyes analyzed the situation. "They have been preparing for centuries," Elvan said. "They have struck a world we considered untouchable. They are not acting out of desperation. This was a test." The chamber grew silent. Elvan's voice was devoid of emotion. "Humanity does not fear us anymore." Her many eyes blinked in eerie synchronization. "But we should fear them." Back in the Sol system, aboard the Nemesis, Admiral Nix stood at the bridge, watching the retreating smoke from Tau Ceti on the view screens. "Mission complete," Commander Varma's voice came through the comms. "The Council knows we're back." Nix turned to General Kane, who stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "They're going to respond," she said. Kane nodded. "That's what we want." He stepped forward, staring out at the void, his voice calm. "Now, we show them what happens when you try to erase humanity." The Council wasted no time. Within days, a massive fleet had been assembled. Thousands of warships from every major species, a show of force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council's response was swift and merciless, a total military campaign to destroy Earth and eradicate humanity once and for all. From their throne world of Verathus Prime, Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar issued a declaration of war, broadcast across the stars. Humanity was given its chance. It was warned, it was exiled, and now it has chosen war. "We will not allow this disease to spread. Earth will be purged. The mistake of their survival ends now. Across the Council's empire, fleets mobilized. War factories roared to life. Armies were deployed. They believed this was a war they could win in days, perhaps weeks at most. They had no idea what they were walking into. On Earth, General Kane stood in the Warborn Command Center, surrounded by holographic projections of the incoming Council fleets. The enemy was moving fast. Good. The humans had spent centuries in the shadows, refining their weapons, testing their strategies, and designing technologies the galaxy had never seen. The war humanity had prepared for was finally here. Commander Asha Varma adjusted her combat gauntlet. "They're bringing everything they have," Admiral Nix smirked. "Then they've already lost." The Council believed humanity would fight a traditional war. Fleet against fleet, planetary sieges, ground battles. They assumed humanity would break under overwhelming firepower. But the Council still didn't understand what humanity had become. They didn't understand the phantom fleets, the experimental stealth warships that could phase between dimensions, striking without warning. They didn't understand the Legion Protocol, the AI-driven war networks that allowed human forces to act as one unified mind, predicting enemy movements with terrifying accuracy. They didn't understand Project Revenant, the bio-enhanced super soldiers bred for war, stronger, faster, and more adaptable than anything the galaxy had ever faced. They didn't understand that humanity had turned war into an art form, and they were about to learn. The first council fleets arrived at the edges of the solar system, expecting to face resistance. Instead, they found nothing. No defenses, no fleets, just the cold emptiness of space. Arrogance clouded their judgment. They advanced deeper. And then, the traps activated. Invisible mines tore through warships. Energy storms fried navigation systems. Cybernetic viruses shut down entire command networks. Ships collided in the chaos, confusion spreading like wildfire. Then, the real attack began. Human warships decloaked inside the enemy formations, striking from impossible angles. The phantom fleets appeared and disappeared like specters, obliterating key targets before fading back into the void. Council vessels turned to flee, only to find every exit blocked, every escape route already predicted. The battle wasn't a fight, it was a massacre. Across the system, Legion squads deployed onto enemy flagships, their cybernetic enhancements making them more machine than human. Council soldiers, unprepared for the speed and brutality of these warriors, fell before they could even raise their weapons. In the span of a single day, the first wave of the Council's invasion force was annihilated, and Earth hadn't even fired a single planetary defense cannon. On Varathus Prime, panic spread through the Council chambers. Reports flooded in. Entire fleets gone, officers missing, planets under attack from unseen enemies. Elvan, the High Strategist, watched the chaos in silence. "This is impossible," Zalthor hissed. "They were supposed to be weak." Elvan finally spoke, her voice as cold as ever. "We miscalculated." The room fell silent. "They have been preparing for this far longer than we expected," she continued. "We assumed their exile weakened them. It did not. It forged them into something stronger than any of us." She turned, her many eyes narrowing. "We are no longer hunting humanity." She let the words sink in. "They are hunting us." Aboard the Nemesis, Admiral Nix stood on the bridge, watching the wreckage of Council ships drift through space. "This is just the beginning," she murmured. General Kane nodded. "They wanted war." His eyes burned with cold fury. "Now we give them extinction." The Council was reeling. Never before had they faced an enemy like this. An enemy that struck from the shadows. An enemy that understood them better than they understood themselves. The fleets they had sent to destroy Earth had been torn apart like fragile glass, their proud warships reduced to debris drifting in the cold abyss. Now, the Council's paranoia was growing. Humanity was no longer an inconvenience. It was a nightmare they had unleashed upon themselves. Yet, Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar refused to admit defeat. "We are the rulers of this galaxy," he roared in the Council chambers, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "We have crushed empires before. Humanity is no different." But as his rage filled the room, Elvan, the High Strategist, remained motionless, her many black eyes staring through the holographic battle reports. "No," she finally said. The word was quiet, but it cut through the Chancellor's fury like a blade. "We have already lost," Elvan continued. "The moment we underestimated them, the moment we cast them into exile without ensuring their extinction, we sealed our fate." Vokhtar snarled. "So what do you propose? That we surrender?" Elvan slowly turned her gaze to him. "No," she said again. "I propose that we hide." The Council chamber fell into stunned silence. Elvan leaned forward, her mandibles twitching in what could almost be described as unease. "We are fighting an enemy that does not fight conventionally. They do not seek to conquer. They seek to destroy. We are not dealing with an empire. We are dealing with a revenge machine." She activated a holo map of the galaxy, showing the growing number of Council worlds that had gone dark in the past month. They are not just attacking military targets, they are erasing us. In the darkness of space, the Black Armada moved like a silent storm. World after world fell without warning. Human warships bypassed planetary defenses, dropping infiltration teams that disabled entire governments overnight. Political leaders vanished. Military installations turned to smoking ruins before reinforcements could even arrive. On Kelvara Prime, the ruling family of the Vornathi Empire awoke to find their planetary palace breached. In their final moments, they saw faceless human operatives, clad in black armor, before their entire bloodline was erased. On Draknar IV, the warlords of the Jari Empire tried to rally their forces. Their capital city was leveled in a single night. Their bodies were never found. On Thalos V, a major production hub for Council warships, an entire factory world was consumed in flames when human saboteurs triggered cascading reactor failures across the planet. The galaxy was bleeding. Humanity was not waging war. They were committing extermination. Back in the Sol system, aboard the Warborn Command Center, General Kane stood before his gathered commanders. "We are past the point of negotiation," he said. "They exiled us. They tried to erase us. They failed. Now, we finish what they started." Commander Asha Varma's expression was unreadable. "And if they surrender," Kane's voice remained steady, "they won't." A hush fell over the room, but then Admiral Nix spoke, her voice like a knife through the silence. "And if they do," she said, "we don't accept." On Verathis Prime, Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar stared at the final reports. Entire species wiped from the stars, entire worlds reduced to lifeless husks. For the first time in his life, he felt fear. The humans were coming, and this time, there would be no mercy. The galaxy was unraveling. The once mighty Galactic Council had ruled with an iron grip for centuries, its authority unchallenged, its dominion absolute. Now that dominion was a dying ember. Entire fleets had been reduced to floating wreckage. Key industrial worlds lay in ruins. The Council's great cities, once thriving centers of commerce and power, were silent tombs. The war was no longer about survival. It was a massacre. Yet, in the heart of Verathis Prime, Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar refused to yield. "We still have the core worlds," he growled, staring at the gathered remnants of his war council. "Humanity has taken our fringes, but they have yet to breach the core. As long as we hold the capital, we still have power." General Threxus, a hardened war commander from the Draknar Empire, stepped forward. His reptilian features were lined with exhaustion. "With respect, Chancellor," Threxus said, his voice heavy, "our fleets are broken, our people are terrified. The moment humanity arrives here, the war is over." Vokhtar slammed a fist onto the war table. "Then we make a stand. We gather every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We will not go down without a fight." The chamber fell silent. Elvan, the high strategist, observed the exchange without expression. She had spent her long life analyzing war, predicting outcomes, calculating survival chances. She did not speak, because she already knew the truth. Humanity had already won, and then the alarms blared. In the void beyond Verathis Prime, the Black Armada emerged from the shadows. Thousands of human warships, their hulls painted in black to swallow light, advanced with the slow, deliberate inevitability of death itself. They did not rush. They did not waste effort. They moved as if they already owned the battlefield. And in a way, they did. Council defense fleets scrambled to meet them, forming desperate battle lines. They launched every last weapon in their arsenal, desperate to halt the advancing tide. The humans did not flinch. Stealth cruisers phased between dimensions, striking from impossible angles. Cyber warfare teams shut down enemy ships before they could fire a single shot. Legionnaires deployed in high-orbit drop pods, cutting through enemy defenses like a virus through flesh. The battle was not a contest. It was the last breath of a dying empire. Inside the Chancellor's war room, chaos erupted. "Our fleets are breaking!" a tactical officer shouted. "They've already taken the outer orbital stations." Vokhtar gritted his teeth. "Deploy the planetary defense grid. I want every gun on that fleet." "The defense grid is compromised," another officer reported, his voice shaking. "They've already taken control of it." A deep, suffocating silence filled the room. And then the lights flickered. Elvan turned her many eyes toward the darkened corners of the chamber. "We're already dead," she murmured. The security doors slammed shut. Gunfire erupted. The war room descended into screams as human operatives emerged from the shadows, their weapons precise, their movements calculated. One by one, council leaders fell where they stood, their bodies slumping over the war table that had once dictated the fate of the galaxy. The last to fall was Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar. As he gasped for breath, blood pooling beneath him, he saw a shadowed figure standing over him. A human. General Kane. Kane knelt beside him, staring into the Chancellor's eyes with cold detachment. "You should have finished the job when you had the chance," Kane said. Then, without another word, he ended Vokhtar's life. The Galactic Council was no more. Within hours, Verathis Prime burned. Its towers crumbled. Its streets were flooded with smoke and ruin. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, and there would be no mercy. The war was over, but the new era was only beginning. The war was over, but humanity was not finished. With the fall of Verathis Prime, the Galactic Council ceased to exist. Its leaders were dead. Its fleets were destroyed. Its laws, once absolute, had turned to dust. Across the galaxy, species that had once bowed to the Council now faced a grim reality. Their rulers were gone. Their armies had fallen. And the new masters of the stars had no intention of ruling with kindness. Humanity did not seek to govern the galaxy. They sought to rebuild it in their image. And that meant tearing down the old order, piece by piece. The capital of the new regime was not on Earth. Earth had become a symbol, a legend whispered among the remnants of the galaxy, a forbidden world that no alien dared approach, shrouded in myths of its unbreakable defenses. Instead, humanity chose Draxis IV, a former industrial hub of the Council, as their new throne world. It was a planet of steel and fire, where the sky was choked with the smoke of endless forges, where warships were built faster than the stars could count. From here, General Kane, now supreme executor of the human dominion, ruled with an iron grip. His council was not made of politicians. It was made of warriors. Admiral Nix, commander of the Black Armada, Asha Varma, head of the Phantom Division, Legate Orion, leader of the Revenant Corps. There was no democracy. There were no negotiations. There was only order. The species of the galaxy quickly learned what it meant to live under human rule. For those who surrendered, there was survival. They were allowed to exist, under strict conditions. Their worlds were monitored, their resources were taxed. They were never allowed to rebuild their fleets beyond what humanity permitted. For those who resisted, there was annihilation. The Jari tried to fight back, launching a desperate last stand in the Kelvanis Nebula. Their fleet was wiped from existence in a single night. Their homeworld now a smoldering wasteland. The Yavati attempted an insurgency, believing they could wage a guerrilla war against their human overlords. They learned too late that humanity had mastered the art of total warfare. Their rebellion lasted 36 hours. Their species was never seen again. And then there were the remnants, the scattered survivors of the former Galactic Council, hiding in the farthest reaches of space, clinging to the hope that one day they might rise again. They were hunted. One by one, the last survivors of the old regime were erased. The galaxy belonged to humanity now. And yet, even as the stars burned under their dominion, there were whispers of a hidden enemy. Deep in the uncharted regions of space, beyond the known galaxy, something was stirring, something ancient, something watching. Humanity had proven themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, but they had not yet faced what lay beyond. And soon, they would learn that in the grand order of the universe, even conquerors could become prey. The galaxy knelt beneath human rule. The once mighty Galactic Council had crumbled into dust, its remnants scattered, its worlds either subjugated or destroyed. Across the stars, alien civilizations lived under the ever-watchful eye of humanity's war machine. But in the void beyond charted space, something stirred. A signal. It was faint, an impossible whisper on frequencies long thought dead. It did not originate from any known civilization. It did not match any council archives. It was something older, and it was watching. Supreme Executor Kane stood aboard the Horizon's End, humanity's most powerful command ship, staring at the transmission on the holodisplay. The signal was repeating, a deep pulse that seemed almost alive, shifting in ways no language had ever been deciphered. "This doesn't match anything in the Council's archives?" Kane asked. "No, sir," Admiral Nix responded, arms crossed. "And that's what concerns me." Behind them, Asha Varma, head of the Phantom Division, leaned forward, her cybernetic implants processing the data faster than any human mind. "This isn't just a distress signal," she murmured. "It's an invitation." Kane's gaze hardened. An invitation to what? Asha hesitated, her neural interface analyzing the sub-frequencies. "Something is expecting us." Silence fell over the command room. For decades, humanity had been the hunters. They had torn through the Council's defenses, crushed the empires of old, and established dominance over the known galaxy. But this was different. This signal was not from prey. It was from something waiting. A task force was assembled. The Spearhead Fleet, a detachment of humanity's best warships led by the battleship Iron Vow, was sent beyond the edge of known space, following the signal to its source. For weeks, they traveled through the void, crossing the desolate remains of star systems long abandoned. Until, finally, they found it. A world, or what was left of one. A shattered planet, its surface scarred with the ruins of a civilization so ancient that even time itself had forgotten its name. But the ruins were not dead. There was power pulsing beneath them. And the moment the humans arrived, the signal changed. It spoke. Inside the command center of the Iron Vow, the transmission echoed through the ship's speakers. It was not in any known language, yet every human understood its meaning. "You are not the first." The word sent a chill through the room. We watched as others rose, as they conquered, as they fell. The signal pulsed, as if amused. "You think yourselves supreme, but you are only the next chapter in an endless cycle." Then, for the first time, Kane heard something he had not expected. Laughter. Deep, resonant, inhuman laughter. And then, something woke beneath the ruins. The ruins trembled. Beneath the surface of the shattered world, ancient mechanisms groaned to life, shaking off the weight of millennia. Dust, untouched for eons, spiraled into the thin atmosphere as vast, unseen machines rumbled deep beneath the crust. On the bridge of the Iron Vow, every human officer stood frozen, their eyes locked onto the planetary feed. The signal had changed. It no longer carried just whispers. It was now a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, deafening. And then the ground split open. "Fleet-wide alert," Admiral Nix barked. "Prepare for immediate withdrawal." "Negative," Kane countered, his voice like iron. "We hold position." The humans had come here seeking answers. He would not allow them to flee now, not when they were finally face to face with something that predated even the Council. The ground continued to split apart, revealing something beneath. A city. A vast, impossible city, buried beneath the planet's crust. Towers of obsidian metal pierced the broken sky, humming with power. Glyphs, glowing with an eerie green energy, traced patterns over massive walls. And at the heart of it all, a monolith, a black spire, rising kilometers into the air, waiting. Kane exhaled. That's not just a ruin. Asha Varma's cybernetic eyes flickered. No. She swallowed hard. That's a tomb. The fleet hovered above the surface, their weapons locked onto the monolith. Then, without warning, something answered the signal. The space around the planet ripped open. It wasn't a warp jump. It wasn't an FTL breach. It was something wrong, something unnatural, a hole in reality itself. And through it came ships. Or at least something like ships. Their hulls were blacker than the void, their forms shifting, rippling as if refusing to be fully seen. They made no sound. They gave off no energy signatures. They had been waiting. And now, they had returned. Inside the Iron Vow, alarms blared. "Unknown vessels detected. They just appeared." Kane clenched his jaw. "Hail them." No response. The ships did not move to attack. They simply watched. Then, the monolith spoke again. "You were warned." A terrible, slow realization dawned. This was not a simple distress signal. This was a test. And humanity had just triggered something that had ended empires before them. The unknown ships finally moved, not toward the humans, toward the rest of the galaxy. Whatever these things were, they had just awoken, and they were not here to talk. The black ships moved without sound, without warning, without hesitation. Within moments, they vanished, not into hyperspace, not into any known FTL pathway. They simply disappeared, slipping through the fabric of reality itself. And then, across the galaxy, the nightmare began. The first attack struck Omega-4, a human-occupied stronghold on the edge of the Dominion's territory. The colony had stood unchallenged for years, a fortress world built to crush any rebellion. It boasted planetary shields, orbital defenses, and an armada capable of holding off an entire fleet. None of it mattered. The enemy arrived inside the shields, their ships phasing into existence within Omega-4's defenses, as though they had never needed to travel at all. By the time the alarms rang, it was too late. The black ships unmade the colony, not with weapons, not with explosions, but with something worse. Wherever their shadows passed, matter simply ceased to exist. Buildings crumbled into nothing. People vanished mid-step, mid-scream, mid-thought. Within 3 minutes, Omega-4 no longer existed. The transmission logs captured only one thing before the world was erased. A single whisper. "We remember." The Dominion's fleets responded at once. Admiral Nix led a counterattack, assembling 6 battle groups to defend the next projected targets. This time, humanity was ready. Or so they thought. The battle for Draxis 7 was a massacre. The Iron Vow and her fleet held formation, their weapon arrays locked onto empty space. Every human gun, missile, and energy cannon was primed, watching, waiting. Then, the black ships came again. Not from hyperspace, not from warp gates. They simply appeared, emerging from nothingness in perfect synchronization, like an orchestra playing to the beat of war. The first volleys were fired. And they did nothing. Humanity's weapons passed through the black ships without effect. Bullets, beams, nuclear warheads, everything phased through them as though they weren't real. And then, the enemy answered. A wave of darkness swept through the fleet, ships crumbling into dust as if they had never existed. Entire crews vanished. No screams, no wreckage, just erasure. Admiral Nix ordered a retreat. Less than 10% of her forces survived. Back on Draxus 4, Supreme Executor Kane watched the battle logs in grim silence. The Dominion had won every war it had ever fought. But now, they faced an enemy that didn't play by the rules of reality. Kane turned to Asha Varma, his expression like stone. "Find me something we can kill them with." Asha's cybernetic eyes flickered, scanning through every possible tactic. Every historical war, every classified council archive they had seized. There was nothing. Nothing but rumors. Whispers of an ancient war fought long before the council, before any known civilization, and one name that kept appearing in the data: the Forgotten. "They were wiped from history," Asha murmured. "Not by time, not by war." She looked up at Kane, her voice quiet. "They were erased by these things." Kane's jaw tightened. "Then why the hell are they back?" Asha hesitated, and then she said the words Kane did not want to hear. "Because we woke them up." The Dominion had one last chance. If they didn't find a way to fight back, humanity wouldn't just lose the war. They would be forgotten, just like those who came before them. The realization hit humanity like a tidal wave. They had not merely stumbled upon an ancient enemy, they had unleashed it. The Forgotten, as the Whispers called them, were not a race, not a species, not even a force of nature. They were something older, something that existed outside the boundaries of comprehension, a remnant of a universe that had ended long before this one began. And now, humanity's relentless ambition had drawn their gaze. The Dominion was fracturing. World after world fell silent, erased from existence as the black ships spread their shadow across the galaxy. Panic gripped even the most hardened soldiers. The invincible war machine that had crushed the Galactic Council was powerless against an enemy that could not be touched, could not be fought, could not be understood. But humanity did not survive centuries of exile by surrendering. Supreme Executor Elias Kane stood in the Warborn Command Center, the last bastion of human resistance, now relocated to a fortified station orbiting Earth itself. The galaxy they had conquered was slipping away, but Earth, the cradle of their defiance, remained untouched. For now. Around him, the remnants of his war council gathered. Admiral Nix, her fleet reduced to a handful of battered ships. Commander Asha Varma, her cybernetic enhancements pushed to their limits as she scoured every scrap of data for a solution. And Legate Orion, the stoic leader of the Revenant Corps, his bio-enhanced soldiers ready to die for a cause they no longer fully understood. "We can't fight them with weapons," Asha said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into her face. "Everything we've thrown at them, energy, matter, even experimental phasing tech, it's useless." "Then we don't fight them with weapons," Kane replied. The room turned to him, confusion flickering in their eyes. Kane stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the holo display showing the encroaching darkness swallowing the stars. "They're not just erasing us. They're erasing everything we've built, everything we are. They want us forgotten, so we make sure they can't forget us." Nix raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we outlast them?" "No," Kane said. "I'm suggesting we burn so bright they choke on the ashes." The plan was desperate, insane, and quintessentially human. They called it Project Eternal Flame. Using the Dominion's most advanced technology, combined with fragments of Council archives and the faint clues left in the ruins of the shattered world where this nightmare began, humanity devised a final act of defiance. They couldn't destroy the Forgotten, they couldn't stop them, but they could make sure their mark on the universe endured. The core of the plan was a weapon of last resort, a quantum resonance cascade. It wasn't designed to kill the enemy, it was designed to imprint humanity's existence into the fabric of reality itself. Every ship, every station, every human world would become a beacon, broadcasting a signal so powerful it would echo through time and space, beyond the reach of erasure. It would cost everything. The black ships closed in on Earth, their silent advance unstoppable. The remnants of the Black Armada formed a final defensive line, knowing they would fall. The Phantom Division deployed across the system, planting the cascade devices on every moon, every asteroid, every fragment of human territory left. Kane stood on the bridge of the horizon's end, watching as the enemy approached. Beside him, Nix and Asha prepared for the end. "Activate it," Kane ordered. Across the solar system, the cascade devices flared to life. A wave of light, impossible, blinding, infinite, erupted from Earth and its surroundings, rippling outward through the galaxy. It carried everything: humanity's history, their triumphs, their failures, their rage, their hope. It burned into the stars themselves, a testament that could not be undone. The Forgotten paused. For the first time, their advance faltered, as if the sheer audacity of humanity's act had caught them off guard. And then they struck. The black ships descended upon Earth, their shadows consuming the planet in moments. The horizon's end vanished. The Warborn command center dissolved into nothing. Every human, every ship, every trace of their civilization was erased. The galaxy fell silent, but the signal remained. Long after the Forgotten retreated back into the void, long after the stars grew cold, the quantum resonance cascade endured. It whispered through the cosmos, a defiant echo that no force could silence. The Forgotten had won the war, but humanity had won eternity. They were gone, but they would never be forgotten. The enemy fleet hovered in the darkness of space, their sleek ships forming a blockade around the besieged planet of Varlock. For centuries, the Vashari Dominion had ruled this sector with an iron grip, enslaving weaker species, crushing rebellions, and expanding their empire with ruthless efficiency. They had never feared any foe, until now, until humanity arrived. The UN's nemesis loomed in the void, a monster of war forged from Earth's unrelenting defiance. It was unlike any ship the Vashari had ever encountered, twice the size of their largest dreadnought, its hull blackened by the scars of 100 battles and bristling with weapons that could tear apart entire fleets. The name Nemesis was whispered like a death sentence among the alien ranks. From the bridge, Admiral Elias Varian stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on the viewscreen. The Vashari fleet was vast, 300 warships against his lone battleship. The odds were, by all logical measures, impossible, except humanity never cared for logic when it came to war. "Admiral," Commander Sarah Holt said, her voice steady. "They're hailing us." Varian exhaled slowly. "Let them speak." The alien's face flickered onto the screen. A reptilian creature draped in ceremonial armor, its golden scales reflecting the dim light. High Warlord Koresh of the Vashari Dominion glared at Varian with undisguised contempt. "Humans," Koresh hissed, "you defy the Dominion, yet you stand alone. Surrender your vessel, and I may grant your species a merciful death." Varian chuckled, shaking his head. "You don't understand, do you?" His voice was almost amused. "We're not here to negotiate." Koresh's slitted eyes narrowed. "Then you have sealed your fate." Varian raised an eyebrow. "No, Warlord, you have." With a slight nod, he gave the command. Fire. The Nemesis roared to life. The main cannon, an experimental weapon designed to harness the destructive power of a dying star, unleashed a beam of searing white energy. The first Vashari battleship in its path didn't just explode. It disintegrated, torn apart at the atomic level. The rest of the Vashari fleet had mere seconds to react before the Nemesis rained hell upon them. Its railguns fired at impossible velocities, ripping through shields as though they were paper. Swarms of autonomous drone fighters poured from its hangars, weaving between enemy ships, tearing them apart with surgical precision. Koresh's expression shifted from arrogance to horror. "Impossible!" he snarled. "One ship cannot—" "One human warship is all it takes," Varian interrupted coldly. "You should have learned that when we burned your last colony to the ground." The battle was not a battle. It was a massacre. One by one, Vashari warships met their end in blinding explosions. Escape pods were ignored. Mercy was not on the agenda. Humanity had seen what the Dominion did to their prisoners. Entire colonies reduced to labor camps, civilians experimented on, children taken and never seen again. This was not just war. It was vengeance. Varian watched as the enemy fleet crumbled, their command structure dissolving into chaos. The Vashari had always believed they were the apex predators of the galaxy, but they had never encountered humanity at war, and humanity did not forgive. As the last enemy vessel erupted into a fireball, Varian turned his attention to the planet below. Varlock was a fortress world, home to billions of Vashari. It had once been a symbol of their might. Now it was simply a target. "Sir," Holt said, hesitating. "Orders?" Varian's voice was devoid of hesitation. "Glass it." The Nemesis began its final act. Orbital bombardment rained down upon the planet, turning cities into craters, forests into ash, rivers into boiling steam. The screams of the Vashari echoed through intercepted transmissions before silence took their place. A wasteland, just like the countless human colonies the Dominion had destroyed before. Varian turned away from the screen. "Set course for the next Dominion world," he ordered. "This war doesn't end until they beg for extinction." And with that, the Nemesis disappeared into the void, leaving only fire and ruin in its wake. The Nemesis sailed through the black abyss of space, its colossal frame nearly silent as it moved toward its next target. The bridge was eerily calm, despite the destruction they had just wrought upon Varlock. The enemy's screams, their desperate cries for help, had already faded into the background of war. Admiral Varian stood motionless, staring out at the endless void. His reflection in the reinforced glass looked almost alien to him, his once sharp features now hardened by the weight of command. He had long abandoned the idea of peace. Peace was a lie the Dominion had spat at humanity while putting their boots on Earth's throat. "Sir," Commander Holt's voice cut through the silence. "Our next target is Trion 7. Intelligence suggests it's a major supply hub for the Dominion's core fleets." Varian didn't turn. "What's the estimated population?" Holt hesitated. "Roughly 20 million. The bridge remained silent, tension thickening the air. 20 million Vashari. Soldiers, civilians, workers, children. A hesitation hung in the air, a moment of humanity clawing at the crew's conscience. "Good," Varian finally said. "If we cripple their supply lines, we cripple their war." Holt nodded, but said nothing. She had been with Varian since the first retaliation against the Dominion, had seen the atrocities committed against humanity firsthand. There was no room for doubt, no space for mercy. Mercy was what had let the Dominion expand unchecked. Mercy was what had cost them Earth's outer colonies. A transmission interrupted their thoughts. "Incoming message from the Dominion, sir," one of the officers reported. High Warlord Koresh survived. He wants to talk. Varian smirked. Patch him through. The reptilian warlord's face flickered onto the screen. This time there was no arrogance, only barely contained fury and fear. You will suffer for what you've done, human, Koresh growled, his voice filled with venom. The Dominion does not fall so easily. Varian leaned forward slightly, his expression cold. It already has. You just haven't realized it yet. Koresh bared his fangs. You are monsters. Varian let out a short laugh, void of humor. Monsters! You enslaved our people. You burned our worlds. And now when we return the favor, you want to cry foul? No, Warlord. You made this war. We're just finishing it. Koresh's claws curled into fists. Humanity will not survive this. The Dominion will strike back. You won't have the chance, Varian said, his voice sharp as a blade. This is not a war of survival for us. This is extermination. Koresh's face twisted with rage, but Varian didn't give him the satisfaction of another word. He cut the transmission and turned back to his crew. Prepare the Hellstorm missiles. I want Trion 7 wiped from the maps. No one questioned the order. The Nemesis pressed forward, carrying humanity's wrath across the stars. The Nemesis slipped through the void, silent and unrelenting. Trion 7 loomed ahead, a planet of steel and industry, its surface covered in sprawling shipyards and supply depots that fed the Dominion's war machine. It was no ordinary target. This was a world designed to fuel their empire's endless expansion, a hub of resources that had supported the enslavement of entire species. But today, it would burn. On the bridge, Admiral Varian watched the tactical display. Thousands of Dominion vessels cluttered Trion 7's orbit, transport ships, refineries, battleships in dry dock. The planet's defensive fleet was nowhere near as large as Varlock's had been. The Dominion hadn't expected a direct assault. A mistake. Status of the Hellstorm missiles? Varian asked, his voice calm. Fully armed and ready, Commander Holt confirmed. We can wipe out the planet's atmosphere in a single strike. Varian nodded. Fire. The Nemesis came alive. From its underbelly, massive silos opened, and the Hellstorm payloads were launched. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward Trion 7, each one containing a payload designed not for precision, but for annihilation. Planetary shields flared to life, but it was futile. The missiles didn't aim for cities. They detonated in the upper atmosphere. The sky turned red, then black as firestorms swept across the world. Below, the surface of Trion 7 descended into chaos. Factories crumbled, supply depots exploded, and the massive orbital shipyards broke apart, sending flaming debris crashing down on the cities below. Smoke choked the air, blocking out the sun. The Dominion forces tried to fight back. A swarm of defense ships surged toward the Nemesis, desperate to protect their crumbling world. Incoming enemy fire, an officer reported. Deploy the drones. Return fire. The swarm of enemy ships barely made it halfway before the Nemesis responded. Drone fighters surged forth, moving like a plague of mechanical death, cutting through the enemy ranks with brutal efficiency. The ship's railguns and laser batteries opened fire, slicing apart the Dominion's defense forces as if they were nothing more than insects. On the surface, the Dominion's command centers sent out desperate distress calls. Messages flooded into the human battleship, pleading for surrender, for mercy, for anything other than what was coming. Varian ignored them all. You never showed us mercy, he muttered under his breath. He watched as the planet turned to ash. Trion 7 was no longer a world. It was a graveyard. Silence fell over the bridge, save for the hum of the ship's systems. The battle was over. There was no celebration, no cheers of victory, only the cold realization that this war had no end. Not until the Dominion itself was nothing more than a whisper in history. Varian exhaled. Set course for the next target. The nemesis disappeared into the void, leaving behind only smoke, ruin, and the dying screams of an empire. The silence on the bridge of the nemesis was deafening. No one spoke, no one moved. The screen still showed the burning wreckage of Trion 7, the massive industrial world reduced to a wasteland in mere hours. Even from orbit, the scars were visible. Craters where entire cities once stood, firestorms raging through the ruins. The once thriving supply hub of the Dominion was now nothing more than a drifting corpse. Admiral Elias Varian let out a slow breath. There was no satisfaction in what they had done. No joy, only necessity. "They're calling us monsters," Commander Holt said quietly, reading intercepted Dominion transmissions. "Their military channels are in chaos. Some are calling for all-out retaliation. Others—" She hesitated. "Others are already speaking of surrender." Varian scoffed. "Surrender? After what they did to us? Number, they don't get that option." His eyes were cold, distant. "Not yet." The Dominion had enslaved human colonies for decades. When Earth had finally fought back, it wasn't out of ambition. It was out of survival. The war had started with hope. It had turned into vengeance. "Set course for Jaraxxus Prime," Varian ordered. A murmur ran through the crew. Jaraxxus Prime wasn't just another Dominion world. It was one of their core planets, a cultural and political heart of their empire. A direct assault would send a message across the galaxy. Nowhere was safe. "Sir," Lieutenant Moreau, the communications officer, spoke up. "We're receiving a transmission, but not from the Dominion." Varian frowned. "Who is it?" "It's from the Talani Confederacy. They're offering a ceasefire, mediation between us and the Dominion." The Talani were neutral in this war. They had watched from the sidelines as the bloodshed unfolded, unwilling to take a side. But now they were intervening. Now, after humanity had proven what it was capable of. "Put them through." The screen flickered, and a Talani diplomat appeared. A tall, avian-like creature with silver feathers and piercing golden eyes. "Admiral Varian," the Talani envoy began, his voice smooth, calculated. "We have watched this conflict unfold, and we urge you to reconsider your actions. The Dominion has suffered enough." Varian raised an eyebrow. "Enough?" His voice was laced with quiet anger. "Were you there when the Dominion burned our colonies? When they slaughtered our people like cattle? Where was your intervention then?" The Talani envoy didn't flinch. "We understand your anger, Admiral, but this war has reached a turning point. If you continue, it will not be war. It will be extermination." Varian leaned forward, his gaze cold and unwavering. "That's the idea." A long silence. The Talani envoy studied him, as if searching for something, some hint of hesitation, some remnant of humanity's old self before the war had changed them. But there was none. "Admiral," the envoy finally said, "the galaxy is watching. If you destroy the Dominion completely, humanity will not be seen as liberators. You will be seen as conquerors, and one day someone will rise to do to you what you are doing to them." Varian smirked, but there was no humor in it. "Let them try." The screen cut to black. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. No one questioned the Admiral's decision. No one argued. They had all lost too much to care about diplomacy now. Holt shifted uncomfortably. "Do you think the other empires will intervene?" Varian sighed. "They won't move unless we make them, and by the time they decide, it will already be too late." The Nemesis jumped to FTL, streaking through the stars like a shadow of death. Jaraxxus Prime awaited. The Nemesis emerged from FTL like a phantom of destruction, slipping into the orbit of Jaraxxus Prime, one of the Dominion's core worlds. This wasn't some distant colony or a supply hub. It was a beating heart of the Dominion Empire, a world teeming with billions of their kind. It was their pride, their history, their culture. And soon, it would burn. Admiral Varian stood at the command console, watching the massive planet fill the bridge's viewport. Jaraxxus Prime was beautiful in its own way, covered in sprawling cities with towering spires of obsidian and gold. Their structures were sleek, their technology advanced, but beneath all the grandeur, it was still the home of slavers and tyrants. Commander Holt exhaled sharply. "They're hailing us, sir. High Chancellor Ithakis himself." The Dominion's leader. Varian nodded. "Put him through." The screen flickered to life, revealing Rathakis, a towering reptilian figure with dark emerald scales and piercing yellow eyes. Unlike Warlord Koresh, who had snarled and spat threats, Rathakis sat calmly in his ornate throne, watching Varian with a calculated expression. "Admiral Varian," Rathakis said smoothly, "you stand at the gates of my world. What will you do?" Varian's face was emotionless. "What I have done to every world before this." Rathakis nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "We underestimated you. We saw humanity as a lesser species, weak, divided. But now I see something else. I see a force that even the Dominion cannot contain." Varian tilted his head slightly. "If you're about to beg, don't waste my time." The Dominion leader's lips curled into something resembling a smirk. "Beg? Number, but I will offer you something no human leader has ever had before. Dominion surrender." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Even Holt's usual icy demeanor cracked for a moment. Varian's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Rathakis leaned forward. "Withdraw your forces. Stop your war. In return, we will recognize humanity as an equal power. The Dominion will cease all hostilities, return all human prisoners, and sign a non-aggression pact that will last for generations." Silence. It was everything humanity had fought for, everything the war had been about. The nightmare could finally end, with Earth victorious, with humanity free. Varian exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. "And what about justice?" Rathakis blinked. "Justice? For the billions you enslaved, the colonies you burned, the families you ripped apart," Varian said, his voice calm but razor-sharp. "You expect us to just shake hands and move on?" The Dominion leader hesitated for a moment, then spread his clawed hands. "We cannot change the past, Admiral. But we can shape the future. If you destroy us now, you do not just kill an empire, you create a vacuum, and something worse will rise to fill it. You think yourself the harbinger of justice, but tell me, when does justice become vengeance?" Varian stared at him, unblinking. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Something almost human. Then it was gone. "We passed the line between justice and vengeance a long time ago," Varian said quietly. Holt stiffened. "Sir, are you saying, fire the Hellstorm missiles?" A final silence. The death of diplomacy. "Admiral," Rathakis said, his voice quieter now, "do not do this." Varian held his gaze. "Goodbye, Chancellor." The screen cut off. The missiles launched. Jaraxxus Prime's sky turned to fire. The planet's defense grid erupted in a desperate attempt to intercept the incoming devastation. But it was useless. The Nemesis had planned for this. Humanity had perfected planetary extermination. Explosions rippled across the world. Towers collapsed. Entire cities were swallowed by firestorms. Billions screamed, and then the screams faded into static. The Nemesis did not wait to watch the final moments. As the planet burned behind them, Varian turned away. "Set course for the Dominion home world." It was almost over. The Nemesis tore through the void, a specter of death on its final approach. The Dominion homeworld, Corthion Prime, lay ahead. A planet that had ruled the galaxy for centuries, an empire's heart now awaiting the fate of those before it. The end had come. Admiral Varian stood at the bridge, his expression carved from stone. The fiery wreckage of Juraxis Prime still burned in his mind, but there was no regret, no hesitation. The war had started long ago, with Dominion warships glassing human colonies, reducing entire civilizations to slaves. Now, humanity was merely repaying the debt in full. "Enemy fleet detected," Commander Holt reported. "Their last line of defense, estimated 3,000 ships, all converging on our position." Varian exhaled. All that's left of their once mighty armada. Corthion Prime had thrown everything into this final stand. Battleships, cruisers, swarms of fighters. The Dominion had ruled through force and fear for centuries, but now, faced with extinction, they had no choice but to fight to the last. "They're hailing us," Lieutenant Moreau said. "Let me guess," Varian muttered. "More pleas for mercy?" "No, sir," Moreau said, voice grim. "They say they will fight to the last warrior. No surrender." A smirk played at the corner of Varian's lips. "For once, they understand us." A moment of silence settled over the bridge. There was no need for grand speeches, no need for theatrics. Everyone aboard the Nemesis knew what they were about to do. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Engage. The void ignited. The Nemesis moved like a predator, its weapons ripping through the Dominion fleet with precision and brutality. Drone swarms danced through the battlefield, cutting apart enemy fighters like insects trapped in a storm. Railguns thundered, spewing tungsten slugs at near-light speeds, shattering hulls like paper. Dominion ships fought back with everything they had. Plasma beams lanced through the darkness. Missile barrages rained toward the Nemesis. But it was hopeless. Humanity's warship was a fortress of destruction, its defenses unbreakable, its firepower unmatched. Varian watched as the enemy fleet crumbled. One by one, their battleships fell. Command ships detonated in blinding flashes, their crews silenced in an instant. Some Dominion vessels, seeing the inevitability of defeat, tried to flee. The Nemesis did not allow it. "No survivors," Varian ordered. Torpedoes chased down the stragglers, turning their ships into floating wreckage. The Dominion had once terrorized the stars. Now their greatest fleet was nothing more than debris, and Corthion Prime lay defenseless. "Prepare the Hellstorm missiles," Varian commanded. Holt hesitated. "Sir, there are billions down there, civilians." Varian's jaw tightened. "Did they spare ours?" Holt said nothing. She knew the answer. The missiles launched. Corthion Prime's atmosphere turned to fire. The planet's great cities, monuments to an empire that had enslaved species across the stars, collapsed beneath waves of destruction. Plasma storms erupted, oceans boiled, the land itself cracked under the weight of devastation. Humanity had not just won the war. They had erased the Dominion from existence. Varian turned away from the screen. "It's done," he said quietly. Silence filled the bridge. The war that had defined their generation, that had burned through entire civilizations, was over. For the first time in history, humanity stood alone as the dominant force in the galaxy. Varian let out a slow breath. There was no victory song, no celebration. Just the quiet hum of the Nemesis as it disappeared into the stars, leaving nothing but ash in its wake. The void of space stretched endlessly before them, vast and indifferent. The Nemesis drifted in silence, its weapons cooling, its mission complete. Corthion Prime, once the heart of the Dominion, was now a graveyard, a smoldering ruin where billions had drawn their final breath. No cries remained, no fleets, no desperate last stands. Humanity had finished what it started. Admiral Varian stood at the bridge, staring at the dead world below. He had imagined this moment for years. He had envisioned vengeance, the thrill of triumph, the satisfaction of knowing humanity had avenged its dead. But now, looking at the barren wasteland they had created, there was only emptiness. Holt approached him cautiously. "Sir, we've intercepted transmissions across the galaxy. The other empires, they've seen what we've done." Varian didn't turn to her. "And?" She hesitated. "Fear. Some are calling for an alliance against us. Others are silent, watching, waiting." Varian closed his eyes briefly. Of course, this was inevitable. Humanity had not just destroyed an enemy, they had reshaped the balance of power. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species, some stronger, some weaker, all now forced to reevaluate their place. "They fear us," Holt continued, lowering her voice. "They see what we're capable of." Varian exhaled. "Good." Silence lingered between them, thick and heavy. "What now?" Holt finally asked. "We've won. There's no one left to fight." Varian turned away from the viewport, his expression unreadable. "There will always be someone left to fight." Across the galaxy, distant empires whispered in fear. Governments held secret meetings, debating whether humanity was now the greatest threat to existence itself. Some would submit, others would prepare for war. It didn't matter. Humanity had risen, and it would never bow again. The nemesis cut through the darkness of space, moving like a silent wraith. The war was over. The Dominion, the great empire that had once ruled the galaxy, was now nothing but dust and ruin. And yet, the galaxy did not celebrate. It trembled. Varian stood at the command console, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of known star systems. One by one, reports trickled in from human intelligence networks, alien fleets mobilizing, fortifications being reinforced, uneasy truces between long-standing enemies forming. The message was clear. The galaxy was terrified. Humanity was no longer a minor species fighting for survival. It was now the dominant force, the apex predator among the stars. And the rest of the galaxy was trying to decide whether to submit or strike first. Commander Holt approached, her expression tight. "We're receiving diplomatic messages from multiple species. Some are congratulating us, some are less diplomatic." Varian smirked. "Let me guess, they call us monsters?" Holt nodded. "Some are calling us the Butchers of Corthion. Others are demanding answers. They want to know if we intend to conquer them next." Varian let out a slow breath, his fingers tapping against the console. "And what do you think, Commander?" Holt hesitated. "I think they're scared, sir. I think they believe we'll do to them what we did to the Dominion." Varian turned his gaze toward the viewport, watching the endless stretch of space. He had spent his entire career fighting a war for survival, for vengeance. Now that the war was over, he wasn't sure what was left. "We send a message back," he said finally. Holt straightened. "What do we tell them?" Varian's expression was cold, unreadable. "We tell them the truth. Humanity will not start wars, but if they raise a hand against us, we will finish them." Holt gave a slow nod. "Understood." She turned to relay the message, but before she could take a step, another alert flashed on the screen. "Sir," Moreau called out from the comms station, "we're detecting a large-scale energy surge in deep space. Unknown origin." Varian frowned. "Explain." Moreau's hands moved swiftly across the controls, analyzing the data. "It's not a fleet, not a weapon. It's something different, A gravitational anomaly forming outside of mapped star systems. Whatever it is, it's big. Varian's brow furrowed. How big? Moreau hesitated. Large enough to destabilize space-time in the surrounding systems. This isn't just some anomaly. It's a rupture. The bridge went silent. Varian exchanged a glance with Holt. They had fought the Dominion, crushed their empire, and now, just as the war had ended, something new was emerging. Location? Varian asked. Far beyond any explored territory, Moreau answered. Deep space, past the galactic rim. Varian nodded slowly. Then we investigate. Prepare the fleet. Holt stiffened. Sir, we just ended one war. Are we really about to rush headfirst into another unknown? Varian turned to her, his expression calm but resolute. We didn't survive the Dominion just to cower in the dark. Whatever's out there, we'll face it. The Nemesis adjusted course, its engines roaring to life. Humanity had won the war. Now it was time to see what lay beyond. The Nemesis moved through the void, its engines humming softly as it ventured into uncharted space. Behind it, a fleet of humanity's finest warships followed in tight formation. Silent, prepared, watching. The war with the Dominion was over, but now something new loomed ahead. The anomaly. Admiral Varian stood at the bridge, his gaze locked on the holographic display. The readings were unlike anything they had encountered before. A gravitational rift, larger than any known celestial body, pulsed at the edge of the galaxy. Space itself seemed to ripple around it, distorting the fabric of reality. Status? Varian asked. Commander Holt, standing beside him, shook her head. Still no known origin. No signals, no transmissions. Just energy. And a lot of it. Lieutenant Moreau, stationed at the sensor console, leaned forward. Sir, we're detecting movement within the anomaly. Varian's eyes narrowed. Define movement. Moreau's fingers danced across the controls, pulling up enhanced visuals. The display flickered, revealing a swirling mass of darkness. Then something shifted. Shadows coalesced into shapes, unnatural and massive. Silhouettes of what could only be ships emerging from the distortion. Everyone on the bridge froze. Unknown vessels detected, Moreau confirmed, her voice tight. Size impossible. Some of them are larger than entire cities. The Nemesis had faced behemoth-class Dominion warships before, but this was different. These things were not just large. They were unnatural, shifting between states of solidity and void, as if the laws of physics barely applied to them. A voice crackled over the fleet-wide comms. This is Captain Darnell of the Vanguard. What the hell are we looking at? Varian stared at the screen. Something old. Holt swallowed hard. Sir, they're moving toward us. Varian clenched his jaw. Comms, try to hail them. Moreau initiated an open-frequency transmission. This is the United Terran Navy. Identify yourselves. Silence. Then a sound. Not words, not static. A deep, resonant noise like a chorus of voices speaking in layered frequencies. It wasn't a language. It was something deeper, something felt rather than heard. A presence pressing into their minds. The bridge crew stiffened. Moreau shuddered, clutching her head. I can't cut transmission, Varian ordered immediately. The sound stopped, but a lingering unease remained in the air. Holt exhaled sharply. Sir, what the hell was that? Varian didn't answer. His instincts screamed that whatever lay beyond that rift was not something humanity had ever encountered before, not even in myths, not in the oldest of alien records. This was beyond the Dominion, beyond war. This was something ancient. Energy spike, Moreau yelled. They're charging weapons. The bridge exploded into action. Alarms blared as the massive shadow ships surged forward, their forms twisting through space with unnatural speed. "All ships, battle stations," Varian commanded. "Open fire!" The Nemesis unleashed hell. Railguns fired in rapid succession, spewing tungsten slugs at near-light speed. Plasma batteries roared, sending superheated destruction toward the incoming threat. The fleet followed, weapons lighting up the void. For a moment it seemed like humanity would do what it always did: fight, conquer, survive. Then the shadows struck back. Lances of pure blackness lashed out, consuming light itself. The first wave of human ships was torn apart, their hulls crumbling into nothingness before even registering damage. A Dominion fleet would have been obliterated instantly. But humanity was not the Dominion. "Adaptive shielding," Varian barked. "Redirect energy to defensive arrays." The Nemesis shifted, its barriers reforming in real time, countering the unknown energy signatures. The surviving ships did the same, holding formation, learning. Humanity was adaptable. It always had been. The battle raged in the abyss, fire and darkness clashing. The Nemesis weaved between attacks, countering with overwhelming firepower, but for every enemy vessel destroyed, more emerged from the rift. Holt's face was pale. "Sir, there's no end to them." Varian gritted his teeth. They had destroyed the Dominion. Now they were fighting something even worse. And for the first time in a long, long time, he wasn't sure if humanity would survive. The void was a battleground of fire and shadow. Humanity's fleet fought with relentless fury, adapting, countering, surviving. But the enemy was endless. For every shadow ship torn apart by the Nemesis's guns, more emerged from the rift, shifting between dimensions, absorbing damage that should have obliterated them. Admiral Varian gripped the console, his mind racing. He had never faced an enemy like this. Not even the Dominion had possessed such unnatural resilience. Humanity had waged war across the stars. But this was something different. Something beyond war. "Shields at 30%, Holt called out, her voice tight with urgency. "If we don't retreat—" "We can't retreat," Varian cut her off. "If we run, they follow. And if they reach human space, we lose everything." A moment of silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. The reality was sinking in. The fleet couldn't win this battle, not in a conventional sense. Moreau's voice cracked over the chaos. "Sir, the rift. There's a destabilization occurring." Varian turned sharply. "Explain." Moreau's hands moved rapidly across the controls. "It's like their presence is tied to the anomaly. It's their entry point. If we overload it—" "We cut them off," Varian finished, understanding dawning. Holt's expression darkened. "And how exactly do we do that?" Varian's gaze flickered to the status of the Nemesis. The ship was battered, its shields flickering, its weapons burning hot. But its core was still intact. Humanity's warships were built for devastation, and nothing was more devastating than a controlled annihilation. He exhaled. "We take the Nemesis into the rift." The bridge went silent. Holt turned to him, her expression incredulous. "That's suicide." Varian's lips curled into a grim smile. "Number that's war." Moreau's voice wavered. "Sir, if we detonate our core at the right frequency, it might be enough to collapse the anomaly. But that would mean this warship completes its mission," Varian finished. "The Nemesis was built to win wars, and that's exactly what it's going to do." Holt's jaw clenched. "We don't even know if this will work. We could be throwing ourselves into oblivion for nothing." Varian turned to the viewport, watching the endless tide of shadow ships advancing. "And if we do nothing, we guarantee oblivion." A heavy silence fell over the crew. Then, slowly, one by one, they nodded. "All hands," Varian commanded, his voice steady. "Prepare for final approach." The fleet received its orders. The Nemesis would charge into the rift, carrying a payload strong enough to collapse it. The surviving human ships would fall back, carrying word of what had happened here. They would remember. As the Nemesis surged forward, the enemy responded. The shadows swarmed, sensing the threat, pouring everything they had into stopping it. But humanity had already won the moment it chose to fight. Turrets fired relentlessly, carving a path through the abyss. Hull plating melted, shields flickered, warning alarms blared. But the ship never slowed. The rift loomed ahead, a pulsing wound in reality. Varian stood at the bridge, his expression calm. He had fought for humanity's survival his entire life. He had turned planets to dust, crushed empires, reshaped the fate of the galaxy, and now he would end the greatest threat it had ever known. "Detonation in 10 seconds, Moreau announced, her voice steady despite the storm around them. Holt met Varian's gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "See you on the other side," she said softly. Varian smirked. "No, you won't." And then, light. A burst of energy so powerful it tore through space itself. The Nemesis detonated, its core releasing enough force to collapse the rift, sealing the enemy away forever. The surviving human fleet watched as the anomaly imploded, the shadow ships vanishing with it, screaming soundlessly into the void. And then there was silence. Holt, aboard one of the retreating ships, stared at the empty space where the Nemesis had once been. Her fists clenched. Humanity had lost its greatest warship. But it had won. The message was clear, to any species who would threaten them, to any empire that thought humanity was weak. We do not start wars, but we finish them.